Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and share my videos. Captain Elias Ward sat in the farthest corner of the food court, the dull hum of machinery and distant clatter of utensils rising and falling like the colony's heartbeat. His tray carried more than he needed, but he ate slowly, savoring each bite with the practiced caution of a man who had learned to stretch rations through leaner times. His eyes drifted often, scanning the crowd without appearing to, measuring strangers, noting exits. Old habits died hardest, and he had never truly been allowed to bury them. The food tasted of recycled proteins, processed starches, and a trace of spice that tried and failed to disguise its blandness. He did not complain. After years spent with war rations and questionable survival packs, the colony's offerings counted as a luxury. Still, he could not silence the bitter truth whispering in the back of his mind. He was here because there was nowhere else left to go. Once a decorated captain in the Interstellar Guard, now a ghost scraping by at the rim of human-settled space, he found himself exiled by both circumstance and conscience. He had nearly finished when he heard them. "Can we have your leftovers?" The voice was quiet, tentative, but it carried a strange clarity that cut through the chatter around him. Elias froze, fork halfway to his mouth, and lifted his gaze. 4 figures stood before him. Children. Thin, pale, clothes worn to threads, shoes scuffed to near uselessness. They had the look of scavengers, but something about them unsettled him in a way he could not immediately name. It was their eyes. 4 pairs of them, blue like the heart of a reactor flame, catching the light in an unnatural shimmer. For an instant he wondered if he had misjudged their age. Their faces bore the softness of youth, but the gaze was different. Too steady, too knowing, too synchronized. Elias placed the fork down, studying them carefully. "Where are your parents?" His tone carried the hard edge of command, though he kept it low. The children exchanged glances, and the smallest one, a boy who looked barely 7, spoke first. "We don't have any." The others nodded in silent agreement, a gesture too precise to be coincidence. He leaned back, letting silence hang between them, measuring each of their postures. The eldest, perhaps 12, carried himself with protective caution, stepping slightly ahead of the others as though shielding them. The 2 in the middle mirrored each other's stance so closely that Elias wondered if they rehearsed it. He had seen soldiers less disciplined. "You hungry?" he asked finally. "Yes," the eldest replied. The word fell with absolute certainty, not desperation. Elias pushed the tray forward. He expected a rush, the greedy scramble of the starving. Instead, the children organized themselves, dividing what little remained with practiced efficiency, ensuring each received an equal share. No whining, no competition. They ate with quiet intensity, eyes flicking back toward him between bites, as if gauging his reaction. His instincts stirred. Something was wrong here. Hunger alone did not explain their presence, nor did mere misfortune account for those eyes. He had seen modification programs during the war, whispered rumors of hybrid experiments meant to fuse human adaptability with alien design. Most were failures, aborted before birth or lost to madness. He forced himself to look away, but the thought lodged deep in his mind. When the food was gone, he expected them to leave. Instead, they lingered. "What do you want from me?" Elias asked. The eldest wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, then fixed him with a gaze that seemed older than his years. "We need your help." Elias laughed once, humorless and sharp. "You've picked the wrong man for that." The boy did not flinch. "No. We picked the only one." The smallest child leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "The others won't help us." The phrasing caught him. Not can't, but won't. That implied understanding of choices, of rejection already endured. He wondered how many doors these children had knocked on, how many had turned them away, unmoved by 4 pairs of luminous eyes. Elias studied them in silence. He wanted to walk away. He had promised himself he would never again be drawn into causes not his own. But the longer he looked at them, the more he saw the echoes of his own downfall. He too had once asked for help and been denied. He too had been cast aside when he no longer fit the needs of the powerful. His jaw tightened. "Tell me why." The eldest hesitated, then glanced toward the ceiling where surveillance drones drifted lazily. His voice dropped to a murmur. Not here. Elias frowned, weighing the danger. The colony's overseers were always watching, but no one paid much attention to a disgraced soldier eating alone. Drawing attention now would invite questions he had no interest in answering. And yet the certainty in the boy's eyes stirred something buried beneath years of cynicism. He rose, his chair scraping against the floor. The children straightened immediately, ready, almost expectant. He motioned toward the exit. If you're lying to me, you'll regret it. We're not, the boy replied. They walked together into the dim corridors beyond the food court, their footsteps echoing faintly. The colony's lights flickered overhead, revealing walls scarred by decades of patchwork repairs. Elias noticed how the children moved. Not like orphans stumbling through life, but with a strange coordination, as though some invisible thread connected them. They led him through maintenance tunnels reeking of oil and ozone, into a forgotten alcove beneath a turbine shaft. This was their shelter, a crude nest of blankets and scavenged scraps. Elias stood in silence, absorbing the sight. The space was barren, yet arranged with deliberate care, each corner serving a function. For children, it was too orderly. For soldiers, it was too makeshift. The smallest sat cross-legged, staring at him with eyes that glowed faintly even in the dim light. You're not like the others, he said. Elias felt the words strike deeper than intended. He wanted to ask who the others were, but he suspected he already knew. The eldest spoke again, voice low. They'll come for us soon. We don't belong here. You see that, don't you? He met the boy's gaze and, against his better judgment, admitted the truth. Yes. The faintest relief passed across their faces. For the first time since they had approached him, they no longer seemed like predators in the bodies of children. They looked what they truly were, abandoned, lost, and desperate for something they could not name. Yet even in that vulnerability, their eyes glowed brighter. Elias realized the truth was not that they sought his food. They had chosen him, deliberately, for reasons still hidden. And now, without meaning to, he had already stepped into their orbit. The turbine overhead shuddered, drowning the silence for a moment. When the noise faded, Elias asked the question he had tried to avoid. What exactly are you? The children exchanged another of those eerie glances, a wordless conversation passing between them. Finally, the eldest answered. We were made. Elias felt the chill settle deep into his chest. Whatever these children were, whatever purpose they carried, it had just become his problem. Elias stood motionless, the boy's words echoing in the hollow chamber. We were made. The phrase carried no tremor of shame, no attempt to soften its edge. It was spoken as plain fact, but behind it lay 1,000 questions and 1,000 dangers. His first instinct urged him to turn and leave, to let the colony's shadows swallow these strange children. Yet his feet stayed rooted. Made by whom? He asked at last. The eldest lowered his gaze. The others shifted uneasily, as if uncertain how much they should reveal. Finally, the second oldest, a wiry boy with sharp features, whispered, not humans. Not the ones who built this place. Elias's hand twitched toward the scar that cut across his jawline. Memories stirred of whispers during the war, stories about alien factions desperate to craft weapons that could outthink humans in battle. He remembered the dossiers stamped with red seals, marked speculative, unconfirmed, dangerous. None of those rumors had ever been proven, but now 4 pairs of luminous blue eyes stared at him, making the unproven feel suddenly real. They left us, the eldest continued, voice hushed. We were supposed to be something useful. But they failed. Or maybe we did. So they abandoned us. The youngest, barely more than a child, spoke next. We were not meant to be here. They will come back, and if they find us, we'll be taken. Or destroyed. Elias exhaled slowly, his chest tight. He had sworn to stay clear of entanglements. The war had burned enough out of him, betrayal had finished the rest. But walking away now would mean leaving them to whatever fate hunted in the dark. Their existence alone was a spark, one capable of igniting a fire that could consume entire colonies. How long have you been hiding like this? He asked. Since we escaped, the eldest said. Months. Maybe more. Time is strange for us. We don't sleep like you do. We just rest. That admission unsettled him further. These children had been shaped, refined, and discarded, yet they had survived in conditions that would break ordinary humans. Their eyes shone not with innocence but with something closer to design. Elias paced the cramped shelter, his boots scuffing against the metal floor. His mind calculated risks. If the overseers knew what they were, they would not hesitate to sell them to the highest bidder. If word reached alien ears, the colony itself could become collateral. He glanced back at them, seeing not just frightened children but the outlines of weapons disguised in frail frames. You said others wouldn't help you. Who did you ask? The second boy's mouth tightened. Traders. Dockworkers. One man in uniform. They turned us away. Some threatened us. They were afraid. Elias believed it. Even among humans, fear of the unknown outweighed compassion. Yet their choice of him was no accident. They had seen something in him, something he thought long buried. Perhaps they recognized his own exile mirrored theirs. Why me? He asked. The eldest did not hesitate. Because you still look. Everyone else looks away. You measure people when you pass them. You watch corners. You count exits. We know soldiers. You're one. Elias swallowed hard. Their perception was frighteningly precise. He wanted to deny it, to tell them they had chosen poorly. But the truth hung between them, undeniable. A faint hum above broke the moment. The surveillance drone that had seemed so casual in the food court now drifted into the tunnel entrance, its lens glowing red. Elias reacted before thought caught up. He pulled the children behind the turbine support, placing himself between them and the machine. His pulse quickened with the old rhythm of combat, instincts roaring back to life. The drone hovered, scanning. Elias had seconds at most. He hurled a loose scrap of metal down the corridor, the clang echoing through the chamber. The drone turned toward the noise, its sensors distracted. He grabbed a steel rod leaning against the wall and swung with precise force. The machine shattered to the floor, sparking once before falling silent. The children stared, wide-eyed. Not with fear, but with something like recognition. The youngest whispered, "You fought before. You know how." Elias dropped the rod, his breath steady. "That was a scout. More will come." The eldest nodded gravely. "They've found us." The words carried no panic, only inevitability. Elias knew he had crossed the line the moment he destroyed the drone. There would be no returning to solitude now. Whoever watched through that lens would send others, and they would not stop until the children were secured or silenced. He ran a hand across his face, feeling the grit and oil cling to his skin. He had wanted only peace, anonymity, a chance to fade into irrelevance. But peace had never wanted him. And anonymity was no longer an option. "Listen," he said, his voice low, sharp, commanding. "If I stay, they'll track me too. You'll need to move. Do you understand?" The eldest spoke for them. "We won't leave without you." Elias's chest tightened. He should have walked away when they first approached his table. He should have ignored the strange gleam of their eyes. Yet now they stood before him, fragile yet unyielding, insisting he was the only one who could help. His conscience wrestled with the cold calculations of survival, but the outcome had been decided the moment he heard their voices. "Fine," he said. "But you do exactly as I say." Relief flickered across their faces, brief but unmistakable. Elias retrieved his pack from the corner, checking the contents: a sidearm stripped of its authorization chip, a faded cloak that masked thermal signatures, a knife balanced perfectly for combat. He had carried these relics out of habit, though he had sworn never to use them again. Now they felt like inevitability given form. The children followed as he led them deeper into the tunnels, his eyes scanning for signs of pursuit. The colony above thrummed with indifferent life, unaware of the storm gathering beneath its surface. They passed a junction where light filtered through grates, illuminating their eyes like cold fire. Elias felt unease gnaw at him again. They were children, but not children. Victims, yet also something far more dangerous. The universe had a cruel talent for creating weapons and then discarding them. He knew it too well. As they reached a maintenance hatch, The eldest spoke softly. They'll come with soldiers, not just drones. They always use soldiers first. Elias paused with his hand on the lever. How do you know that? The boy's answer chilled him. Because it's what we would do. For the first time, Elias saw not only the vulnerability in their faces but the calculation behind their eyes. They were young, but they understood tactics, strategy, survival in ways ordinary children could not. Their knowledge was instinct, engineered into their bones. He pulled the lever, opening the hatch to a narrow passage leading toward the colony's underdocks. The air grew colder, sharper, tinged with salt from the filtration systems. Beyond this path lay the docks, and beyond the docks lay the void. Elias knew once they stepped outside the safety of anonymity, there would be no turning back. Yet as he looked over his shoulder at the 4 pairs of glowing eyes, he understood the truth. They had already bound him to their fate, and he had already chosen to follow. The youngest reached for his hand. Hesitant, unsure, Elias allowed the contact. Small fingers curled around his own, warm despite the chill. The underdocks smelled of rust and salt, a heavy dampness clinging to the walls where condensation dripped from aging pipes. Elias moved quickly, scanning the shadows with the practiced eye of a man who had spent too many years expecting ambush. The children followed in silence, their small forms weaving easily through narrow gaps. Their eyes gleamed in the dim light, a constant reminder that they were both his burden and his only chance of survival now. The docks were never quiet, even at night cycle. Freight handlers barked orders, machinery clanged as containers shifted, and shuttles lifted with the growl of engines straining against gravity. Yet beneath the noise, Elias caught the rhythm of boots, too deliberate, too uniform to belong to dockworkers. Soldiers. The search had begun. He guided the children into a storage alcove, crouching low beside a stack of crates. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't move unless I tell you." The eldest, who had not yet given his name, nodded once. The others froze in perfect obedience. That discipline unnerved him almost as much as it reassured. He slipped out, hugging the shadows, and caught sight of them. A squad of armored men sweeping the dock, rifles slung ready. Their faces were obscured by visors, their movements crisp and professional. Not colony guards. Too precise. Whoever sent them wanted results, not a scene. Elias returned to the alcove. "They're here for you. We need to move now." The children did not protest. They rose soundlessly, their eyes following his every gesture. He led them toward the freight lifts, but a drone descended suddenly, scanning beams slicing through the air. He pulled the smallest against his chest, shielding him as the beam swept close. The child clung to him, trembling not from fear but from some instinctive recognition of danger. One of the older boys darted forward, pressed his small palm against a control panel, and the drone's beam sputtered out. Sparks flickered, and the machine dropped like a stone. Elias's eyes widened. The boy met his gaze calmly. "I know how they work," he said, as though it were obvious. Elias had no time to question further. Alarms erupted, the squad converged, and shouts filled the dock. He seized the moment of confusion, herding the children toward a freight shuttle idling at the far end. Its crew had wandered off, careless in their routine. "Perfect. Inside," he ordered. The hatch groaned open under his force. The children scrambled aboard while Elias scanned the dock one last time. The squad spotted him, rifles rising. He slammed the hatch shut, bolted toward the cockpit, and threw himself into the pilot's chair. His hands flew across the controls, old training seizing control of his muscles. The engines roared to life. Bullets ricocheted against the hull as the squad fired. The shuttle shuddered under the assault, but the thrusters kicked hard, tearing them free from the dock. Elias gritted his teeth, pushing the ship past safety thresholds. The stars opened before them, a cold expanse of freedom edged with danger. The children gathered behind him, their eyes wide, their bodies braced against the vibration. The youngest whispered, "We're leaving." "Not yet," Elias muttered. His gaze flicked to the scanners. 2 ships detached from orbit, their signatures sharp and unfamiliar. Not human design. Sleek curves, predator-like movements. He recognized them from briefings long ago. Alien. The eldest boy's face hardened. They know already. How? Elias demanded. They always know. He cursed under his breath and angled the shuttle into a debris field of broken satellites and mining fragments. The alien ships followed, swift and merciless. He wove through the wreckage, every maneuver pulling at his muscles. The shuttle was not built for combat, but he coaxed every ounce of performance from it. The children clung to the rails, watching him with something close to awe. When a blast rocked the hull, the youngest screamed, the first sound of true fear Elias had heard from them. Without thinking, he shouted, "Hold on. I'll get us through." His voice was not a promise but a command, and they obeyed. He dove into a dense cluster of wreckage, spinning the shuttle to squeeze through gaps no sane pilot would attempt. The alien ships hesitated, unwilling to risk collision. Elias seized the opening, punching the throttle and breaking free into open space. For the moment, they were clear. He leaned back, sweat streaking his brow, chest heaving. The children surrounded him, their glowing eyes reflecting both relief and something deeper. Respect. Trust. "You've done this before," the eldest said quietly. Elias met his gaze. "Too many times." The boy studied him, then nodded as though confirming something unspoken. "That's why we chose you." Elias wanted to demand answers, to force them to explain what they truly were, but exhaustion pressed against him. He knew only that their hunters were real and relentless, and now he had become part of their war. He set the shuttle on a drifting course away from the colony, far from patrol routes. The silence stretched until one of the middle boys spoke. "You shouldn't have helped us. They'll hunt you now too." "They already were," Elias replied. His voice carried no bitterness, only truth. The youngest tugged at his sleeve. "Will you keep us safe?" The question pierced deeper than any wound. Elias hesitated, then answered with the only honesty he could afford. "I'll try. But you need to trust me." 4 heads nodded in eerie unison. As the hum of the engines steadied, Elias's mind replayed the events. Soldiers, drones, alien ships all converging because of these children. They were valuable, dangerous, and far more than they pretended. He should have felt regret, but instead he felt a spark he thought long extinguished. Purpose. The eldest settled beside him, watching the stars. "They won't stop. If they catch us, they'll take us back. You know what that means." Elias did not answer. He knew. Experiments. Dissection. Control. He had seen too many lives turned into tools by powers both human and alien. He clenched the controls, jaw tight. He would not allow it again. The shuttle drifted past a husk of an old warship, its hull scarred and silent. Memories flared, his own command vessel lost to betrayal, comrades scattered, honor stripped away. He looked at the children and realized the symmetry. Cast-offs of war, forgotten by those who made them, yet still alive. He broke the silence. "We need somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't expect." The eldest tilted his head. "Where?" Elias stared at the derelict warship, the ghost of his past looming against the stars. "There." The children followed his gaze, their eyes glowing brighter in the dim cabin. None objected. Perhaps they understood. Perhaps they always had. The shuttle angled toward the silent hulk, engines humming with renewed purpose. As they closed the distance, Elias felt the gravity of choice settle fully on him. He had taken them from the colony, defied soldiers, and outflown alien hunters. There was no returning now. Behind him, the youngest whispered a final word before sleep claimed him. "Home." Elias said nothing, but for the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe it might be possible. The derelict warship loomed ahead, its vast hull scarred by forgotten battles, its silhouette drifting like a tomb against the stars. Elias guided the shuttle toward a gash in the plating, maneuvering through debris until they slipped inside the hollow vessel. Darkness swallowed them, broken only by the faint glow of the children's eyes. The shuttle settled with a groan against the fractured deck. Elias powered down the engines, listening to the silence settle around them like dust. This ship had once been a fortress, a symbol of human might, and now it was nothing more than a grave. He unstrapped himself, rising slowly, his boots clanging against the cold metal. "Stay close," he said. The children followed without hesitation, their small steps echoing in unison. The air inside was stale but breathable, recycled faintly by forgotten systems still struggling to function. Elias moved through the corridors with grim familiarity. He had commanded ships like this once, shouted orders that decided lives. Now he walked its corpse with 4 abandoned children at his side, the irony heavy as armor. They found a chamber where consoles still flickered weakly, powered by auxiliary cells clinging to life. Elias worked with practiced precision, coaxing the systems awake. One by one, the screens lit, revealing structural readouts, comm relays, and tactical overlays buried in the ship's memory. Dust drifted through the glow, turning the chamber into a cathedral of ghosts. The eldest boy stepped forward, studying the displays. His eyes tracked data far faster than Elias expected, comprehension flashing across his face. "This ship still has weapons," he said. "Barely," Elias replied. "Old, broken, unreliable. But maybe enough." "Enough for what?" the boy asked. Elias looked at him, at the others watching with wide, glowing eyes. He had no illusions about their hunters. They would not stop. Already they were closing in, drawn by the shuttle's flight path, by the trace signatures no pilot could fully erase. Soon alien warships would descend, and this hollow wreck would become their battleground. "Enough to show them we won't run," Elias said. The words hung heavy, final. The children exchanged glances, that same unspoken communication passing between them. No fear showed, only readiness. Elias felt a chill. They were engineered for this, designed not to flinch when death loomed. Yet he could not let them believe battle was their only destiny. He drew them closer. "Listen. You are not weapons. Not to me. You're children. You're human, no matter what they tried to make you. Remember that. If you forget, you'll become exactly what they want." For a moment, silence pressed down. Then the youngest, his small voice trembling but clear, said, "But we don't know how to be anything else." Elias crouched, meeting his glowing eyes. "Then I'll teach you." A tremor ran through the ship, distant but growing. The sensors came alive, flashing warnings. Enemy vessels entering range. Elias rose sharply, his resolve hardening. "Positions. It's time." The children scattered to stations, guided not by training but by instinct. They touched panels as though born to them, systems sparking reluctantly under their hands. Elias manned the primary console, directing power where it mattered. The first alien ship appeared on the display, sleek and curved, a predator cutting through the dark. Then another. Then a third. His pulse quickened. The derelict was no match, yet retreat was no longer possible. They would either stand or be swallowed. The enemy hailed, their voice a distorted hiss through the speakers. "Return the subjects, human. This is your only chance." Elias leaned into the comm, his voice cold steel. "They're not yours. Not anymore." Silence followed, then weapons fire lit the void. The ship shook under the impact, hull groaning as shields barely held. Elias barked orders, not to soldiers but to children who had never known such commands, yet they obeyed as though the bond between them made it natural. Turrets roared reluctantly to life, spitting fire into the darkness. The first volley struck true, damaging one attacker enough to force it back. The children cried out as sparks showered their stations, yet they did not flee. They steadied themselves, eyes glowing brighter, movements synchronizing until they worked as one mind. Elias coordinated their efforts, guiding them through maneuvers the dying ship should not have been capable of. Another blast rocked them, sending Elias sprawling. He dragged himself upright, blood streaking his temple. The eldest boy took his place at a secondary console without hesitation, filling the gap as though they had trained together for years. "You see," the boy shouted over the alarms. "We are useful." Elias gritted his teeth. "You're more than that. Don't forget it." They struck back with everything the warship had left. Torpedoes flared, lasers burned, and for a moment, against all reason, the derelict roared like it had in its prime. One enemy ship broke apart under their fire, debris scattering like sparks across the void. Another withdrew, engines flaring as it limped from range. The third remained, circling, patient and deadly. It fired again, and this time the shields collapsed. The hull screamed, sections tearing away. Warning klaxons howled. The children's faces reflected the red glow, their eyes still steady even as the ship died around them. Elias seized the manual controls, dragging the wreck into a collision course. The children realized his intent, horror flashing across their synchronized faces. "You'll die," the youngest cried. "Better me than you," Elias answered. The alien ship loomed larger, weapons charging for the final strike. Elias braced himself, ready to sacrifice everything. But before impact, the eldest slammed his hand onto the console, his voice raw with defiance. "Not without us." The children's eyes blazed, their voices rising together in a single unearthly cry. Energy surged through the failing systems, a current beyond human design. Consoles flared, weapons realigned, and power coursed where none should exist. The derelict roared one last time, unleashing a storm of fire that tore through the alien vessel, splitting it apart in a blinding explosion. Silence followed, broken only by the groan of the crippled warship. Elias gasped for breath, staring at the ruined display. The enemies were gone. Against every odd, they had survived. He turned to the children. Smoke streaked their faces, their small bodies trembling with exhaustion. Yet their eyes still glowed, softer now, not with alien light but with something more human. "Hope." The eldest whispered, "We chose right." Elias lowered himself beside them, his body aching, his soul heavier than ever yet strangely lighter too. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, firm and steady. "You're not weapons. You're family now. My family." The words surprised even him, but they felt truer than anything he had spoken in years. The children leaned close, for fragile forms huddled against a man who had sworn never to lead again, and together they watched the stars beyond the fractured hull. Around them, the ship was breaking, systems flickering their last. But in that moment, none of it mattered. For the first time in too long, Elias felt purpose not forged in war but born of protection, of something worth living for. The youngest curled against his side, whispering a single word before sleep claimed him. "Father."